After 2 months selling home to travel, my sister and her husband want to live with me rent-free for 10 months. Am I the asshole for refusing them? So, I, 32 male, own a modest 3-bedroom house that I've been paying off for the last 10 years. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine and I'm proud of it. My sister, 29 female, and her husband, 31 male, are the typical free-spirited types. They've always talked about quitting the rat race, living life to the fullest, all that. Well, a few months ago, they finally did it. They sold their house during a booming market, thinking the profit would fund a year-long break to travel. They believed they could stretch the money by traveling cheaply, staying in hostels or Airbnbs, and getting by with occasional odd jobs. At first, they stayed in nicer places and ate out a lot, thinking they had plenty of cushion, but within 2 months, they were out of money. They underestimated how quickly expenses would pile up, especially with 2 young kids, 7 female and 5 male, to feed and care for. Now that their funds are drained, they've decided to stop full-time travel but don't want to settle down yet. Instead, they asked to live with me, rent-free, for the next 10 months while they figure things out. They say they'll still try to take some occasional trips if they find super cheap deals, but for the most part, they want to stay at my house. I told them no. My house isn't big enough, I don't want the disruption, and I certainly don't think it's fair for them to live off me because their plan failed. I offered to help them find an affordable rental or even cover part of their expenses for a couple of months so they could get back on their feet, but that wasn't enough. My sister blew up at me, calling me selfish and accusing me of being jealous of their adventurous lifestyle. To make it worse, my parents are siding with her, saying that family should help the family and that I'm being too rigid. The thing is, my parents live in a small apartment and can't take in my sister's family, which is probably why they're pushing it on me. They say I don't understand the value of experiences and that I should be more supportive. Some of our mutual friends are also saying I should be more understanding, but I think it's completely unreasonable to expect me to house their whole family for nearly a year just because they didn't plan properly. Am I an asshole? Now to the next story, story 2. My own family organized an intervention to disown me for the sake of the family. Sadly, they were unaware of the covert business I owned. Hello everyone, before we begin, a small favor. If you love this type of work, please subscribe. It's free, helps the channel, and ensures you never miss out on great videos. Okay, let's get started. Let me set the scene. My name is Alex, and I've always been referred to as the black sheep of my family. My family is all about appearance. We're talking about an entire clan that is completely infatuated with flashy objects. My parents own a network of jewelry stores where wealthy individuals may spend a year's rent on something they'll only wear twice. Jewelry is more than simply a business for them. It is a part of their personality. Apparently, I am the flaw that tarnishes their flawless image. It's not like I'm a slacker who spends his days playing video games in the basement. Far from it. I own a business that designs and customizes high-end bikes. I'm not referring to the kind you acquire in a sports goods store. These are handcrafted, elegant machines with incredible attention to detail, bikes that are more expensive than some cars. My clientele? CEOs, celebrities, and collectors seeking something one of a kind. But here's the thing, I keep a fairly low profile. I do not drive flashy automobiles or wear expensive watches. My workshop isn't in a flashy office park. It's in an old industrial building that I purchased outright. My company is small, only a few individuals I trust, and we produce bikes with a 6-month wait list. My family? They are not aware of any of this. To them, I'm just the guy who prioritized his hobby over the family business. Growing up, my parents made it apparent that they prioritized achievement, money, and maintaining appearances. My older brother Ethan was groomed to take over the jewelry empire. He has the firstborn golden child idea down to a science. My sister, Vanessa, is their pride and delight since she married into money. And then there's Daniel, the family baby who can't do anything wrong, despite the fact that he lives off the family name. I guess I was doomed from the beginning. I did not want what they wanted. They enjoyed the limelight, the continual desire to network, and the pressure to project the picture of a perfect family. I despised it. When I was younger, I'd sneak away from their silly galas and charity dinners to tinker with everything I could get my hands on. Broken radios, old motorcycles, anything mechanical. That is how I discovered my passion. As I grew older, it became clear that I did not fit in. My parents wanted me to join the family business, but I couldn't think of anything worse. Selling jewelry to people who value money over quality? No, thanks. I wanted to build something with a meaning. After college, which they only paid for because they expected me to come to my senses, I began working on my bike designs. At first, it was just me in my garage, but the demand quickly rose. I invested everything I had in the business, time, energy, and money, and it paid off. My ideas began to gain traction, and I soon had clients eager to pay exorbitant fees for my work. Here's where it gets funny. My family knows I'm self-employed, yet they believe I'm barely getting by. They are unaware of my achievements since I do not brag about it. I drive a regular automobile, dress regularly, and avoid their small networking events like the plague. They see my modest lifestyle as proof that I failed. The truth is that I outperform all of them combined. My business has reached 7 figures. I have collaborations with major brands, a class that has been scheduled for months, and a reputation that is spreading worldwide. But none of that matters to them because, in their opinion, success isn't real unless it's on your wrist or parked in the driveway. The protocol is the same every time I visit them. Ethan brags about his latest strategic partnership, which is really a fancy way of stating he inked a deal set up by his father. Vanessa hints about her glamorous life, which primarily entails being a socialite. Daniel behaves like a frat dude who has never outgrown his college glory days. And me? I receive nice phony smiles and passive-aggressive comments about my potential. Are you still working on those bikes? Dad asks with a disappointed tone. Yeah, I'll reply, keeping things brief because there's no use in explaining myself. Vanessa once asked me directly if I needed help obtaining a real job. I chuckled and told her I was fine, but she gave me a look as if she had just done me a favor by proposing it. The worst aspect is that they never ask about my business, not really. They think it's just a phase I'll go through, as if I'm a naive adolescent. It's offensive, but also sort of funny. They're so caught up in their own world, so persuaded that their way is the only way, that they don't notice what's in front of them. I kept my success to myself for a reason. I'm not hiding it. I simply don't feel the need to prove anything. My work speaks for itself, and those who matter understand the reality. My clients value what I do, my staff is fantastic, and I've created something that I'm truly proud of. I don't need their affirmation or approval, but the truth is that they aren't content to let me live my life. They've been dropping hints and subtle statements about how my actions affect the family. Not being involved in the jewelry business appears to be a form of betrayal. They act as if I owe them something, as if I'm failing to meet their expectations by not following along. Ethan cornered me at one of Mom's dinner gatherings and began lecturing me on family legacy. He literally said, "You're either with us or against us." I nearly choked on my drink. Against you? Dude, I am just trying to live my life. And then, here we are, a brief and quick text from Dad. Family meeting, 8 p.m., be there. So I went to the family meeting expecting a lecture, maybe even a fight. I was unprepared for the circus that awaited me. I could feel the tension in the air from the moment I came in. It was like walking onto a stage with the screenplay fully written and I was the only one who hadn't read it. My father answered the door and gave me a disapproving once-over, as if he was already upset by my existence. He did not even say hi. Instead, he simply mumbled, "You're late," and moved aside to allow me in. For context, my father defines late as anything less than 10 minutes early. So, while I was technically on time, he thought I was an hour late. I didn't bother arguing, there was no point. I just shrugged and stepped inside. The house looked precisely the same as it always did, immaculate, expensive and soulless. Everything in it screamed, "Look how much money we have," from the huge crystal chandelier in the entrance to the immaculately set living room that nobody ever used. It was all simply a big spectacle. And speaking of the living room, that's where everyone was assembled, arranged in a beautiful little semicircle as if they were holding a press conference. Ethan stood on one side, dressed in his regular business casual attire, as if he had just returned from a board meeting. Vanessa was sitting next to him, browsing through her phone and probably appearing to be busy. Daniel was splayed out on a chair, as if he didn't care about anything, but I knew he was enjoying whatever drama was going to develop. Then there was my mother, sitting off to the side like a worried referee, wringing her hands and giving me that tight smile she always gave when things were about to get awkward. Of course, there was my assigned chair, a single lonely seat positioned deliberately in the center of the room, facing everyone. It was so clear that this was an ambush that I nearly laughed. Almost. Dad did not waste any time. As soon as I sat down, he began his speech, emphasizing the value of family unity and heritage preservation. It was all extremely official and rehearsed. At one point, Ethan weighed in with phrases like long-term strategy and brand image, which made me roll my eyes so hard I feared they would get stuck. Vanessa wasn't far behind, commenting on how my decisions were troublesome and how they impacted on the family as a whole. She continued using terms like reputation and status, as if these were the only things that mattered. Daniel didn't say much, and he didn't need to. He was simply sitting there smoking, as if he were watching his favorite television show. I didn't say anything. I simply listened to them, nodding occasionally to give the impression that I was paying attention. To be honest, it was intriguing to see how much effort they had put into the entire process. They truly believed they were conducting some sort of intervention, rescuing me from a life of failure and shame. Finally, Vanessa handed me a folder. She slid it across the coffee table, as if she were presenting me with some sacred document. "This is for the good of the family," she remarked, her tone condescending. I opened the folder and realized how far they were willing to go. Inside were legal papers that were carefully ordered and filled with jargon. I did not need a lawyer to comprehend. The gist was simple. They were cutting me off. No inheritance, no ties to the family business, and no connection to the family name. For a second, I just stared at the papers, not because I was surprised, I could see this coming from a mile away, but because it was ridiculous how serious they were taking this. They truly believed this was some sort of retribution. Dad leaned forward, his voice serious and forceful. "This isn't personal, Alex. It's about business. Your actions have consequences." I raised an eyebrow. "My actions?" "You've made choices that don't align with the family's values," Ethan stated, as if reading from a script. Vanessa nodded. "It's not just about you, Alex. It's about all of us. We have to protect the family name." I wanted to laugh but didn't. Instead, I glanced through the documents, appearing to read them thoroughly. Their eyes were fixed on me the entire time, waiting for my reaction. Finally, I looked up and asked, "Where do I sign?" The room went completely silent. I don't think they expected that. My mother was the first to break the stillness. "Alex, wait, don't you think you should—" "Nope," I replied, cutting her off. "This is exactly what you want, right? To cut me loose? Let's get it over with." Vanessa blinked, apparently taken aback. "It's not about cutting you loose, it's about setting boundaries." "Boundaries?" I said, smirking. "Sure, let's call it that." Dad motioned to the bottom of the page. "Just sign there." So I did. I took the pen, scribbled my name at the bottom, and returned the folder to Vanessa. She appeared unsure whether she was relieved or irritated. "Is that all?" I inquired, straightening up. Dad frowned. "This isn't a joke, Alex. One day, you'll understand that this was necessary." I nodded, having already gotten halfway to the door. "Yeah, I'll be sure to send you a thank you card when that day comes." As I went away, I could feel their gaze on my back, but I didn't glance back. They believed they were making a statement, but all they did was prove what I already knew. They did not understand me, and they never will. When I returned to my workshop that night, I felt neither upset nor defeated. Honestly, I was relieved. That family meeting was simply confirmation of something I'd known for years. I was not one of them. They had no notion who I was or what I had built, and they had no desire to find out. I turned on the lights in my workshop, and the hum of the fluorescent lamps was more soothing than anything I'd felt while sitting in that over-decorated house. The place was my sanctuary, with walls lined with tools, shelves packed with bespoke components, and rows of partially completed motorcycles waiting for me to finish them. It was entirely mine, created with my own 2 hands. My helper, Ben, was still there, working on some late orders. He looked up when I stepped in. "Hey, how'd it go?" he inquired, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "They disowned me," I nonchalantly stated, laying my bag on the workbench. Ben blinked. "Wait, like officially?" "Yep," I answered, taking a half-finished frame from the rack and scrutinizing its welds. "Signed the papers and everything. I'm no longer part of the family." He let out a low whistle. "Damn, you okay?" I shrugged. "Honestly? Yeah. They think they cut me off, but I'm the one who's been carrying them emotionally for years. They did me a favor." We worked in silence for a while, with the only sounds being the buzz of tools and the odd clang of metal. It was peaceful, the kind of peace I had never experienced with my family. A few hours later, I logged onto my business dashboard, and the results made me happy. Orders had skyrocketed. One of our latest designs had become popular in a niche cycling community, and suddenly people were literally throwing money at us. Custom orders, bulk sales from international clients, and even queries from a couple of well-known brands looking to cooperate. It was overwhelming, but in the greatest way. My inbox was swamped with emails, and while the majority were business-related, a couple stuck out. One was from a journalist who wanted to write a piece about me for a lifestyle magazine. Another came from a professional rider who needed a custom bike for their next competition. Then there was the one that gave me pause. A private client offering an insane sum of money for a one-of-a-kind design. I slumped back in my chair, laughing. My family believed I was wasting my life experimenting with bikes, yet it was more profitable than their jewelry business. The truth is, I never cared about money. Don't get me wrong, it's good to be financially secure and not have to worry about bills or debt, but that wasn't the reason I started this. I started it because I like it and wanted to make something with my hands that was both utilitarian and beautiful, something meaningful. What about the money? That was a pleasant bonus. The nicest thing was that it allowed me to keep growing without compromise. I didn't have to answer to anyone, not investors, shareholders, or my family. The following morning, I met with Josh, my business partner, at our favorite diner. Josh is the type of person who is constantly 10 steps ahead of everyone else. He is the reason we have been able to grow the firm so swiftly. All right, he murmured, sliding into the booth across from me. What is the plan? For what? I asked as I sipped my coffee. For dealing with your family, he explained. They'll come crawling back eventually. Do you know that? I shrugged. Allow them. I'm not going to spend my time worrying about them. I have more important things to focus on. Josh smirked. Fair enough. Speaking of broader matters, we need to discuss this. He took out his laptop and showed me an email from one of our vendors. They had offered us an exclusive price on some new materials, but we'd have to commit to a larger manufacturing run than usual. Can we manage it? I asked. Easily, Josh replied. With the orders flowing in, we could treble our output while still having room to breathe. This is an obvious choice. Do it, I instructed. Josh grinned. Done. Things improved over the course of several weeks. The magazine feature debuted, and it was a game-changer. The journalist produced a wonderful article about how I transformed a passion for motorcycles into a thriving business, complete with images of our workshop and some of our most popular designs. The answer was crazy. Orders increased overnight, and our social media platforms were flooded with new fans. We had to hire 2 more individuals merely to meet the demand. Ben, who had been with me since the garage days, began teaching the new hires while I focused on developing our next major project. It was exhausting, but in the greatest possible manner. Every now and then, I would think about my family, not in a sad or nostalgic sense, but rather with interest. I wondered if they had read the article or heard about the company. Part of me wanted to tell them simply to see how they reacted, but another part of me wasn't concerned. I was too preoccupied with creating something real, something they would never understand. One day, I received a call from a firm that manufactured high-end outdoor gear. They wanted to collaborate on a limited edition bike for their upcoming product range. It was the type of collaboration that could propel us to the next level, and I couldn't say yes quick enough. Josh and I spent weeks ironing out the details, working late nights to ensure that everything was flawless. By the time the prototypes were completed, I knew we had something unique. The launch was tremendously successful. The bike sold out in hours, and the hype surrounding the cooperation propelled us to new heights. Suddenly, we were no longer a modest niche business, we were a brand. And during it all, my family remained mute. No call, no text, nothing. I wasn't sure if they were ignoring me or just didn't understand what I was doing. It didn't matter. Their silence did not last long, however. It began with a text. We need to talk. Urgent family matters. Vanessa was the first to break the stillness, as I expected. My siblings were predictable in that regard. She enjoyed being the mediator when things got tense, but her vision of peace usually entailed ensuring that everyone regarded her as the voice of reason. I ignored it. Then came another one, this time from Ethan. Alex, let's meet. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I laughed out loud. Is there a misunderstanding? The same guy who sat there with his impeccable posture, watching me sign away my fortune, suddenly thought we had a slight misunderstanding. Yes, sure, I did not respond to him either. The texts kept coming in over the next 2 days, each one more urgent than the last. Daniels finally arrived, but he was just as sluggish as he was. Yo, you around? Stuff's happening. Very lyrical, that one. But the one that made me pause was from my father. Come home, we need you. That's when I realized things had changed. Dad didn't ask for anything. He ordered, expected, and demanded. Come home was the closest he'd ever come to pleading. At first, I was unsure whether I wanted to answer. A part of me wanted to see how far they would go. But another part of me knew things would inevitably escalate. It was not in their habit to let things go. They required control, and I wasn't following their rules anymore. A week later, as Josh and I were at the workshop, I received a call from an unknown number. Hello, Alex, a familiar voice said, sounding unnecessarily polite. It was Ethan. We need to talk. I rolled my eyes. I got your texts. What do you want? He paused for a second, revealing everything I needed to know. It's about the family business. Ah, there it was. The family company, of course. We're having some challenges, he said, and I could almost hear the pain in his voice as he said it. It's not a great time for us, and we think you could help. I could help? I inquired, leaning back in my chair and smiled. That's interesting. Last time we talked, I was an embarrassment to the family. My choices didn't align with your values, remember? Alex, Ethan murmured, changing into his favorite condescending elder brother voice. Let's not dwell on the past. This is bigger than all of us. I laughed. No, it's not. It's about you, Ethan, and Vanessa, and Dad, and the fact that none of you have any idea how to adapt to a world that's moving faster than you are. He attempted to push back, but I cut him off. I'm busy, Ethan. If the business is struggling, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't good enough to be part of the family. I hung up before he could reply. That was satisfactory. Vanessa made her next move a few days later, when she unexpectedly arrived at my workshop. I was in the process of fine-tuning a bespoke build for a new client when I noticed her car pull into the parking lot. She stepped out in her luxury heels and sunglasses, as if she were walking into a nice boutique, not one where grease and metal were the major decor. I met her at the door, not trying to hide my irritation. What are you doing here? She flashed me one of her excessively polished smiles. Alex, we need to talk. I'm working, I explained, crossing my arms. This won't take long, she said, moving past me into the workshop. She looked around, evidently displeased with the ordered mess. So this is what you've been doing? Bikes? Yep, I replied, not giving anything else. She groaned and turned to face me. Look, things aren't great right now. The business is struggling, and Dad's not handling it well. Ethan's trying to hold things together, but... She trailed off, waiting for me to intervene and save the day. I did not. Finally, she stated, We need you, Alex. Those comments affected her in a different way than she expected. For years I'd been rejected as the one who didn't measure up. And now, they now needed me. What exactly do you think I can do? I inquired, leaning against one of the workbenches. You've always been good with creative ideas, she added, her tone a touch too sweet. And you've clearly been doing okay for yourself here. Okay? I asked, raising an eyebrow. She flinched, realizing her error. I didn't mean it like that. We're in trouble, Alex. The market's changing, and we didn't adapt fast enough. Sales are down, and Dad's, well, he's too proud to admit we need help. But Ethan and I think you could bring something new to the table. I stared at her for a long time, letting her words linger in the air. This was Vanessa, the same person who used to mock my small project and once told me I was squandering my talent, and now she was asking for my assistance. It felt nice. Let me get this straight, I finally remarked. You want me to come back and fix the business after everything you guys pulled? She nodded. We made mistakes, I'll admit that, but we're trying to make things right. I inclined my head, appearing to think about it. Yeah, no. I'm good. Vanessa's face fell. Alex, please. This isn't just about us. It's about the legacy. Your legacy, I corrected her. Not mine. I already have something I'm proud of, and it doesn't involve begging people to buy overpriced necklaces. Her immaculate mask slipped for a second, and I saw a glimpse of frustration. But before she could say anything else, I unlocked the door and motioned for her to exit. Have a nice day, Vanessa. Then, a week later, Dad arrived at the workshop, looking more exhausted and worn out than I had ever seen him. He didn't even bother with politeness. We need to talk, he remarked quietly and seriously. I leaned against the doorframe and crossed my arms. Do we, though? He groaned and ran his fingers through his graying hair. Alex, I'll admit it, we were wrong about you. About everything. The business is failing. I can't fix it. Your brother can't fix it. We need your help. I stared at him for a long time, allowing the weight of his words to settle in. This was the man who had always preached about pride and reputation, and now he was virtually pleading for my help. I'll think about it, I finally answered, moving aside to let him enter. And that's when I understood the tables had completely turned. When I promised my father I'd think about it, I didn't intend to let them off the hook. If they wanted me to salvage the family business, they'd have to work for it. For the first time in their lives, they needed to know what it was like to not have all the cards. Over the next few days, I let them stew. There are no calls, texts, or anything. I wasn't ignoring them for petty reasons. Okay, maybe only a little. I wanted them to recognize that they were no longer in control. They disowned me like it was nothing, and now they're circling back, trying to bring me on board. I wasn't going to make things simple. Josh, of course, found the whole thing amusing. So let me get this straight, he began, leaning on the workbench as I adjusted a frame. They need you to preserve their business, but they haven't apologized, and they certainly haven't admitted how badly they messed up. Pretty much, I replied, smirking. And you just let them twist in the wind? I shrugged. Feels fair. Josh laughed. I wish I had your patience. I'd be sticking it in their faces every chance I had. Oh, don't worry, I said. They'll get what's coming, but it's not going to be on their terms. A few days later, Vanessa called again. This time I picked up. Alex, she exclaimed, sounding too joyful. Thank you for finally responding. I was beginning to suspect you were avoiding us. I snubbed the bait. What do you want? She paused, and I could tell she was trying to figure out how to word the plea she was about to make. I wanted to check in, see if you've given any more thought to, helping out with the family business. I have thought about it, I said. And I have a few conditions. She was silent for a moment. Okay, what types of conditions? I want full control, I murmured, relishing the moment. Here's the plan. I'll take over the business. You will continue to work as employees, with no titles or power. You will respond to me. Vanessa almost choked. Wait, complete control? Alex, that is not negotiable. I shut her off. If you don't like it, find someone else to fix your mess. She stuttered, trying to argue, but I stood strong. She eventually promised to talk to Dad and Ethan and get back to me. My dad returned to the workshop the following day. He appeared more put together this time, but the despair in his eyes was still evident. Vanessa told me about your conditions, he began as soon as he got in. He exhaled. That's a hefty ask, Alex. You're asking us to hand over the firm your mother and I started from the ground up. I leaned on the workbench, crossing my arms. No, I'm asking you to hand over the company that is failing because none of you understand how to change. If you want me to save it, you must let me do it my way. Otherwise, what is the point? He said nothing. For a long time, I could see the inner conflict on his face. Eventually he nodded. Fine, you can have full control, but there's one condition, he told me. Here we go, I mumbled. I want you to keep the family name attached to the business, he told me. That's all we have left. I thought about it for a bit. It wasn't an outrageous request, and to be honest, I didn't care about the name either way. Deal, I said. The real fun began after the family reluctantly agreed to let me take complete control. I did not waste any time diving in. If they expected this to be a slow, peaceful transition in which they could dispute or second-guess my actions, they were mistaken. This was not a democracy. It was a dictatorship, and I was in charge. The first thing I did after taking over was demolish their beloved hierarchy. Ethan had been conducting operations as if he were auditioning for a reality show about dumb executives. His concept of leadership involved shouting at people when things went wrong and claiming credit when things went right. That was not going to fly. I called a staff meeting in the main office. All managers, department heads, and key personnel were invited. My family also showed up, but they seemed uneasy, sitting off to the side like school children waiting for the principal to scold them. All right, I said, standing at the head of the meeting table. Let us get one thing straight. The previous manner of doing things is obsolete. This company will now be driven by outcomes rather than nepotism. A few others looked anxiously at Ethan, who was staring at me as if I had insulted his entire being. I pointed to the whiteboard behind me, where I had outlined a clear strategy. We are streamlining everything. No more bloated budgets, superfluous overhead, or out-of-date practices. I am interested in hearing your views. If you've been buried beneath layers of bureaucracy, that ends now. This is your moment to show what you are capable of. One of the managers raised their hand. And how about the family? I smirked. They will be held to the same standard as everyone else. No exceptions. Ethan scoffed, but I ignored him. Vanessa appeared to want to burrow beneath the table, while Daniel was half asleep. Classic. I then tackled the stores. Half of them were losing money because they had not been updated in decades. The exhibits were worn, the layouts were unclear, and the employees appeared to be just waiting for someone to put them out of their misery. I instantly shut down the locations with the lowest performance. Some employees were disgruntled, which I understood. but I made sure to provide severance compensation and job placement aid. This was not about punishing somebody, it was about saving the organization. The remaining stores received a comprehensive renovation. I hired designers to remodel the premises, transforming them into clean, minimalist showrooms that focused on products rather than gimmicky sales practices. I also implemented a new inventory system, making it easier for customers to browse and buy, whether in store or online. Speaking of online, this was another key area where the corporation had struggled. Their website appeared to be trapped in 2005, complete with clumsy navigation and fuzzy photos. I scrapped it all and hired a team of developers to create a new website from scratch. It was quick, easy to use, and smartphone optimized. Within weeks of launch, internet sales surged. Then came the product line. This was where I truly put my mark on things. For years, the company produced the same old designs, gaudy, costly jewelry aimed at an older audience. It was okay for the older set, but it utterly ignored younger customers seeking something new and current. I launched a new line centered on minimalist, ecological designs. Consider exquisite items crafted from recycled materials, with an emphasis on craftsmanship and storytelling. Each piece included a card explaining where the materials came from and how they were recycled. It was a hit. People appreciated the concept of owning something unique that didn't harm the environment. Vanessa first despised the idea. She claimed that it was too hazardous and did not meet our clients' expectations. But after the numbers started flooding in, she had to concede I was correct. Of course, not everything went well. I had to deal with a lot of criticism, especially from my own family. Ethan, in particular, seems determined to undercut me at every opportunity. He'd pull me aside after meetings and say things like, "Are you certain this is the best decision? I mean, you're new to this level of management." I'd just smile and say, "You're welcome to step down if you believe you can't handle the changes." That typically silenced him. And Daniel? Honestly, I had no idea what he was doing half the time. He'd arrive at meetings late, if at all, and offer nothing. I eventually assigned him a tiny responsibility maintaining the company's social media profiles, which kept him busy enough without inflicting any significant damage. Despite the hurdles, the outcomes spoke for themselves. Within 6 months, the company was unrecognizable, in a positive sense. Sales were up across the board, the new product lines were receiving fantastic reviews, and we'd even begun to attract younger, more tech-savvy clients. What is the best part? My family was beginning to sense a power shift. They had spent their entire lives at the top of the food chain, but now they were just like any other employee. They responded to me. One day, I arranged a meeting for just the 4 of us. Myself, Dad, Ethan, and Vanessa. I wanted to make sure they knew exactly where we stood. "Let me be clear," I stated, leaning back in my chair. "I now own this corporation. If you decide to stay, you will do things my way. If you don't like it, there's the door." Dad grimaced, but said nothing. Ethan appeared to want to argue, but Vanessa placed a hand on his arm and shook her head. "I'm serious," I added. "I'm not here to continue the family legacy. I'm here to make something better. If that requires letting go of the past, so be it." For once, nobody had anything to say. The turning point came when one of the industry's largest trade exhibitions encouraged us to present the new collection. It was the type of event that could make or destroy a company's reputation, and I was determined to leave an impression. I designed the booth myself, providing a sleek, immersive experience that emphasized the company's sustainable innovations while also telling the tale of its transformation. My family was present, of course, but this time I was the star of the show. Customers, journalists, and industry experts rushed to our exhibit, admiring the new approach and questioning how we'd turned things around so rapidly. I made every effort to give credit where it was due, particularly to the staff who had worked tirelessly to make it happen. As I saw people admire the pieces I helped make, I felt a surge of pride that I had never felt before. This wasn't just about preserving a business, it was about showing to myself, and to them, that I was capable of far more than they had previously given me credit for. By the end of the show, we had secured several new collaborations, and the brand was more popular than ever. My family was finally realizing that I wasn't just the black sheep anymore, I was leading the charge. Then one day it occurred. This was the moment I had been waiting for. We had just finished a quarterly review meeting, and I had delivered some of the best data the company had ever seen. My father cleared his throat just as I was about to finish the lecture. "Alex," he whispered, his voice as gentle as I had ever heard it, "I just wanted to say how proud I am of you. You have accomplished something that none of us could have done. You did more than just salvage the business, you improved it." The room became silent. Even Ethan and Vanessa appeared astonished. "Thanks," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Vanessa joined in. Dad is right, we should have seen your potential sooner. You've taken this company to places we never imagined possible. Ethan nodded, grudgingly. You proved everyone incorrect. I can admit that. It was weird to hear them admit it out loud. We've been talking, Dad said, looking at the others. We'd like to fix things, not just the business, but us, the family. There it was, the apology and the olive branch. I sat back in my chair, allowing their comments to hang in the air for a minute. I appreciate that, I said. But let's be honest, you didn't want me in the family until I proved useful. That is not something I can forget. Vanessa looked down, obviously uncomfortable, but she did not object. I'm not interested in pretending things are fine. Our current system is functional. We're working together, and that's it. I don't need anything else. Ethan frowned. Come on, Alex, we are family. We made mistakes, but we're striving to make things right. You're trying to make it right because you have no choice, I responded calmly. If this firm had failed, you would not be here today. Let us not change history. Dad seemed to want to argue, but then sighed and nodded. Fair enough. Here's the deal, I explained, rising up and gathering my notes. I will remain operating the firm, and you will continue to do your tasks, but aside from that, we're okay where we are. No more pretending to have a happy family. We tried that, but it didn't work. When I left the meeting, the room was quiet, but I didn't feel awful about it. I wasn't angry, nor was I resentful. I knew exactly where I stood, and I was not going to let them cross that line again. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.